Can Washington make the playoffs this season with Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback? I want to give a special shout out to the sponsor of this video, Manscaped. So Manscaped recently just launched their Lawnmower 4.0. And listen, if you are a guy who does a lot of shaving underneath, the Lawnmower 4.0 is the perfect tool for you because listen, my first time shaving a couple of months ago went terrible. I had a bunch of scrapes, I had a bunch of bruises, and I also had patches because I didn't finish the job. So when Manscaped sent me the Lawnmower 4.0, I used it, and I was a little bit scared, okay? Because I was like, you know, I ain't trying to give myself patches and give myself injuries like I did last time, my first time shaving. But when I used the Lawnmower 4.0, let me tell you guys something. It was a easy process. I had no scrapes, no bruises. It was no pain. Listen, if you're a guy who does a lot of shaving underneath, make sure that you guys go ahead and cop the Lawnmower 4.0 using my promo code JT for 20% off plus free shipping off your Manscaped purchase. Once again, make sure that you guys use promo code JT for 20% off your purchase plus free shipping. Your balls will thank you. So I was on Twitter and I was just browsing through my feed, and I saw a pretty interesting argument. So when the schedule release came out, there was a Washington fan and a Dallas Cowboys fan going back and forth in terms of who would win the division and who would end up making the playoffs. Now, this Washington fan just got absolutely raided by, it seemed like, the whole entire Dallas Cowboys fan base. They basically said that Washington has no chance of making it to the playoffs with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, I strongly disagree with those Dallas Cowboy fans. I actually was going to comment a response, but it was so many Dallas Cowboy fans, my notifications would have got blown up, and I didn't want to go through that having to mute everybody. So I said I'd rather make a video about this topic. Now, a lot of people think that Washington should have drafted a quarterback in this year's draft. I disagree with that statement. I think Washington did the right thing by passing on a quarterback and choosing to address other areas of need, because you can definitely make the playoffs with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick was not bad for Miami. Now, of course, you probably would like to do a lot better at quarterback, but Ryan Fitzpatrick definitely can get Washington to the playoffs. Last year, he was pretty good for Miami. As a matter of fact, I came on here and made a video about how I disagreed with the decision for the Dolphins to bench Ryan Fitzpatrick in favor of Tua Tagovailoa, because Ryan Fitzpatrick, his worst game came against New England Patriots, and that was earlier on in the season. After that game, he was really solid. So I feel like Ryan Fitzpatrick definitely can get Washington to the playoffs. When you look at the weapons that they have, okay, you had Curtis Samuel in free agency, who played with Ron Rivera when he was the head coach of the Carolina Panthers a few years back. You add him. Okay, then you pick up Dommy Brown, who is one of my favorite wide receivers in this year's draft. On top of that, you already have Ted McLaurin. You have tight end Logan Thomas, who is one of the biggest breakout stars last year for Washington. You're going to have Antonio Gibson in the backfield. On top of that, you have a really great defense. And everybody acts like you got to have a great quarterback to make it to the playoffs. You don't have to have a good quarterback. And Ryan Fitzpatrick definitely shows up in a lot of big moments. Like, I think the key to making it to the playoffs is having a quarterback that's able to get the job done when the game's on the line. That's definitely something that you get out of Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like, he had several instances last year where he was really good in last-minute situations for Washington. Remember that Las Vegas Raiders game when they decided to bench Tua the last couple of minutes of the fourth quarter, and Ryan Fitzpatrick drove them all the way down the field and they kicked the game-winning field goal to win? So Ryan Fitzpatrick definitely is good enough to get a team to the playoffs. Now, he's not the long-term answer. Nobody really knows who's the long-term answer is at QB for Washington. Some people think it's Taylor Heinicke. But if Washington needs a quarterback, they can definitely find a great one in the 2022 draft class, because the 2022 quarterback class is absolutely loaded. There's like 7 to 8 guys who could get drafted in the first round as of right now. So if Washington needs a quarterback, they definitely can address that next year. I feel like Washington is doing a good thing, because a lot of people, this is the mistake that a lot of teams make. Instead of building up their team first, they just draft the rookie quarterback and give him a terrible roster to work with. What Washington has done is they built this team. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL. They address the other areas of concern, like wide receiver. They got more playmakers. They continue to improve and develop their offensive line. Now you got Ryan Fitzpatrick back there. So pretty much for Washington, they have their team set up to the point that if they do want to draft a quarterback next year, they're going to be in a really good situation to succeed because they have a good team around them. Meanwhile, you have a lot of teams that make the mistake of drafting a quarterback and yet they get set up to fail because they have a bad team around them. One good example of this was Josh Rosen and Sam Darnold. Those guys got drafted before Arizona and New York really gave those guys a team, and it backfired on them. Both of those guys ended up not being really good. Sam Darnold ended up getting another shot with Carolina, but Josh Rosen pretty much is considered to be a bust. So I think it's really important to build your team up first before you draft a rookie quarterback. Therefore, that rookie quarterback can come in and have the best situation possible to succeed. Now, I like the selection of Jamin Davis. Jamin Davis was my second favorite linebacker behind Xavier Collins in this draft class. I think he's definitely going to be in the running for a defensive rookie of the year. So Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be good enough to get the job done because Ron Rivera isn't this offensive mastermind of coach. Ron Rivera doesn't want to have a great offense. As a matter of fact, Ron Rivera pretty much relies on his defense to win games. He's not a guy who needs an overly dynamic offense. Like, remember when Carolina went to the Super Bowl in 2015? Their offense didn't really have a lot of great playmakers. Like, you had a couple of Pro Bowlers on there, but you had a really good offensive line. You didn't really have a lot of explosiveness on offense. You had Cam Newton as your MVP, but Ted Ginn was your best wide receiver. You also had Greg Olsen. So, for Ron Rivera, he chooses to win games by his defense. The offense doesn't have to be anything spectacular. The offense just needs to be able to keep drives going and score a few amount of points. If you ask Ron Rivera which he prefers, elite offense or elite defense, he probably would tell you he would prefer elite defense because that's the style that Ron Rivera chooses to, try to win games with, is by relying on his defense. And we saw that last year with Washington. Ron Rivera leaning on his defense to win games for him. So for Washington, they don't need to have this incredibly explosive offense. Like, everybody thinks you got to be Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs or the Cleveland Browns to be successful in this league. You can still win in this league by being average on offense and having a great defense. And I really like the skill position players, especially that wide receiver room, how it's looking up there in Washington, especially with Dommy Brown and Terry McLaurin now and Curtis Samuel. So now Terry McLaurin is going to be the guy just getting all the attention on defense. That's going to help him out a lot. So I definitely think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is good enough to get Washington to the playoffs, and I definitely feel like Washington could definitely win the division with Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. You got to remember, Dallas didn't have a defense last year. New York had a pretty good defense. Philadelphia is Philadelphia right now. So for the Washington football team, people need to stop looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick as a turnoff for why Washington can't have success this year, because quarterback is not the end-all be-all. Like, you can still go to the playoffs with average quarterback play. So I definitely think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is good enough to get Washington to the playoffs. And as a matter of fact, he probably has a better team this year than what he ever had when he was with the Miami Dolphins, when he was a starter there. Miami had a young offensive line. The run game was okay. It was decent at times with Myles Gaskins. The wide receiver position needed some work. Aside from Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki, you didn't really have anything there. He's going to a Washington team that has a lot of weapons and a lot of talent offensively. On top of that, you have a better offensive line. So Ryan Fitzpatrick, I definitely feel like he can get Washington to the playoffs. But you guys let me know what you guys think down in the comment section down below. Do you guys think that Ryan Fitzpatrick can lead the Washington football team to the playoffs this year? Make sure that you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and college football videos, and thanks for watching.